good evening, everyone. And it's 6:01 p.m. Chicago time. Welcome to our, I believe now would be our sixth, right? Our sixth meeting / webinar for ACM Chicago. So if you don't know me, my name is Alvin Chin. I'm the chair for ACM Chicago. And as you see for the slides that have been shared here, we have a talk this evening by Oana Olteanu from SignalFire. We're pleased to have her this evening, and she will be talking about how to fund and launch your AI startup. As I'm sure maybe a lot of you have also a lot of ideas, especially, from how this year, everything with AI has been such, much in the news, especially with ChatGPT going on. And you may have attended our previous event where we had Matt Welsh from Fixie.ai talking about end of programming as well. So just wanted to kind of give a thank you to our organizers or so for this particular event. So for ACM Chicago, Mark Temkin, the person on the left, he is our vice chair for ACM Chicago. We have Greg Newmark, who is the treasurer for ACM Chicago. Myself, shown there on the third. And the fourth is our vice chair for IEEE Computer Society Chicago. So we've done a lot of joint events, ACM Chicago with IEEE. So we've done a lot of stuff together because we have a lot of things that are in common. So it made sense, especially during pandemic, that time to combine groups together. You can see here that, if you want to see our previous events or our upcoming events, you can subscribe, go to our meetup.com/ACM-Chicago, or you can go to IEEEchicago.org/CS. So we thank for those people from ACM Chicago that are here this evening. We also thank as well for those members from IEEE Computer Society Chicago, as well as IEEE Chicago. And we also thank, we have someone from ACM New York, Hari Talavarti, who's also invited his particular members from their chapter also here as well. So thank you all for joining this evening. So the reason why you're here, obviously, is not to hear me speak. So it's our speaker of the event tonight. So Oana Olteanu. So a little about her. I'll hand it over to Mark to give an introduction, and then she'll go ahead and talk.
Great.
All right, so go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Alvin. And before I give the introduction, I want to remind everyone that please use the Q&A for questions rather than the chat window. Thanks for doing that. I first learned about Oana Olteanu as she was the moderator for an ACM Tech Talk featuring our February speaker, Matt, the end of programming Welsh. When I read about her background in the ML field, and that she was active in venture capital, then we knew she had to be our next Chicago NYC ACM speaker. Oana has worked in machine learning engineering for SAP before becoming involved in venture capital. She also is an organizer helping other women in the tech field with She's Ready to Dev, as well as working for SignalFire, which is a venture capital firm that invests in seed stage companies and breakout companies. So let's have a big internet round of applause for Oana Olteanu.
All right. And I'll stop sharing, and now you can go ahead and give your talk.
Perfect. Thank you. Have you ever laid down in bed at night thinking about an idea, and you have maybe imagined for 1 minute that what would it be like to wake up tomorrow to work on this new idea? And so I want you to not be like those people who will just dream for 1 minute. I am going to share all the tools that I have to empower you to feel like you can go after the idea that you've been thinking about building out into a company. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for hosting me. I'm delighted to be able to talk with you about how to launch and how to raise the funding for an AI startup. So what are you going to learn today? We are going to go all the way from concept, you have an idea, to now you have money in the bank and you have a team that you can go after and implement this idea. And you might wonder, okay, I've had an idea, and as you said, and laid in bed at night thinking about it, and then I wake up and it's Groundhog Day. It's just going back to my regular job and nothing changes. So why would I do anything about it now? That's the question. And I think you should do something about it now because there is a unique moment in time where there are several favorable conditions which make this present time the best time to build a company. And one of these is the barrier of entry, the technological barrier of entry is actually lowered. Until now, if you are not able to code, that was a deal breaker. Right now, with these new AI, large language models, and generative AI, you no longer have to code to be able to build something. The new interface is natural language. There are also many other companies who build low code, no code tools. So you can actually build your product all visually with like drag and drop. And for those who already knew how to code, new tools like Copilot improve your productivity out of the get-go already. And so the barrier of entry has been lower. There are many resources online as well. And I'm happy to share with you some of those who have been most useful to me. And because also the barrier is lower, there is also a lot more talent who is now available in market. Yes, we all know, unfortunately, some of our friends have been part of some layoffs, but what's exciting right now, also besides the talent coming from the layoffs, is this new technology has been one of the fastest technologies to be adopted by everybody. And so the top talent from maybe big tech companies who you would never dream of, maybe getting somebody like Mark to come and work for your company, or somebody like Alvin, you would have never dreamt about it before. But now this new generative AI technology is so fascinating that the top talent wants to get their hands on it. They want to experiment with it. And they also know that innovation happens at the startup level. It's not at the big company. And so now is the time when this talent is much more likely to come work for your small startup than ever before. And also with COVID, although it was horrible for all of us to go through that, remote work or hybrid work is now a lot more acceptable, and it's no longer a taboo. And so you might wonder, okay, now is the right time. It's the lower barrier of entry, and I have these amazing potential people I could go and try and convince to join my company, but I have no money. And so for many of us, it stops here. The dream about, wow, I'm going to build this thing out, and every day I'm going to work for this thing that I have a passion for. And so in this talk, I will share with you that actually now it's a good time to go and fundraise. Maybe if you just open Twitter, you might be under the impression that there is like doom and gloom, and now this market is not the best to fundraise. But the reality is it is a good time to fundraise because of the market conditions. Many VCs are trying to stretch their capital, and they're doing that because it's uncertain if they will be able to raise their next funds. And if they are trying to stretch their capital but still deploy, it means they will be writing smaller checks. And so these smaller checks, they also want to maintain the ownership in the companies they're investing in, which means a typical Series A investor often will now write like a seed check or a pre-seed check. And so there is a lot of dry powder funds who have been already closed their fundraising activities, and they are sitting on a lot of money, and they are also more risk adverse to spend it on like big checks. And so they are writing these smaller checks. And in addition to that, there are also these solo VCs, like VC who raises 10 million or so, and just by themselves, there is no other infrastructure. Now it's a good time to also raise from those, because in the next fundraising cycle, it's unclear if some of those will succeed. So the good news is there is money in the market. People are writing early stage checks. You can get more talent that before it was not even by imagination possible to access. And there is no longer a high technological barrier of entry. And so you have that idea, and maybe now you'll do something about that idea, but usually people who have one idea have had many other ideas. And so how do you know which is the idea that you're going to go after? And how will you gain the confidence to maybe quit your job at a stable company and go pursue this thing, which is just a possibility? And the answer for that question is you have to do market and use case validation. So many future or potential founders fall into this trap of, I have an idea, I'm just going to rush to product. I'm going to validate the product. But in reality, before you rush to the product, you have to figure out, is this prize worth winning? If this problem has a solution, is this going to be a massive outcome? And guess what? The VCs who are evaluating the company are thinking the same thing. They are thinking about it from the perspective of every investment made should have the potential to return the fund, the entire fund that they raised. And that means usually, can this company be acquired for $500 million or more, or can this company IPO? Everybody writes these checks thinking this company will return the fund versus this will be a small acquisition and just return the money to our LPs and not make any profits for our limited partners who have entrusted us with their money. And so the worst thing you could do here, given that's the framework of the problem, is when you go and pitch a VC, to grab some numbers from the internet. For example, IoT, 127 billion or whatever, some big number, and put it on the slide. That's a waste of space and also a waste of time in the conversation with a VC. And that is because as an investor, you want to backtrack what's the addressable market here. And so having just a number from the internet, it's not going to explain to them how you arrived to that number. How many of these people are in the world who could be potentially buying your product at the price that you have in mind? And so that's one common trap that would be good to get rid of when you're going to pitch somebody. And so the answer is you have to talk with customers. And when you talk with customers, best is not to talk them, what do you want? Because customers can only see a few iterations out. And you as a founder, it's your job to go 4 or 7 years out. And you're able to come up with a prototype, not necessarily based on what the customer wants right now, but actually you're able to come up with a prototype based on how the customer feels. Where are the pain points of the customers? Where does it hurt? These are the things that early on, besides validating the size of the market, you want to feel the pain of that customer. And once you have a good grip on that, then based on your experience and imagination and hard work, you can come up with a prototype that will address those needs. And so our talk has AI in the title. You might wonder, okay, but like how about AI? Where there is opportunity in AI? Because all of us are bombarded day and night with new AI announcements or AI this, AI that. And the reason for that is AI is loved right now both by incumbents and native AI companies. And the reason for it is incumbent companies who are non-native AI, they like this wave because guess what? They can charge a higher premium for AI features, which means all of a sudden your market has expanded because you can charge more. And then the native AI companies, they love it so much because AI raises the floor. You don't have to spend so much time in development. You can just go a lot faster. But at the end of the day, the customers don't care about how high the floor is. They care about how high the ceiling is. How much your outcome with AI is actually better for my own bottom line, for my own business, for the KPIs I care about as a customer. And so that's the reason why everybody is rushing towards it right now. It allows you to get faster to an outcome. And it's good for companies who are not native and just want to sprinkle some AI so they can charge a bit more, and for companies who are just new to the game. And so you might wonder, okay, but like, where is the opportunity? And so here I'm breaking it down for you according to the stack. At the foundation layer, you have these providers of foundation models. So OpenAI, Cohere, and so on. In my opinion, and it's one woman's opinion, there is less opportunity for startups here, because to be able to produce these foundation models, you have to have a lot of data and compute. And so a lot of you might wonder, okay, but we've all seen Facebook open source some models. There are a bunch of companies open sourcing their models. Are they giving their secret sauce away? And the answer is no, they are not, because the secret sauce is actually in the data and in the compute. And so this is a very capital intensive business. OpenAI, for example, thinks they have to raise $100 billion. For a startup who maybe can raise $1 million or $2 million to get going on a prototype, that's going to be a lot harder to compete. And so I personally believe there is less opportunity there for typical founders. Maybe if you're one of the interns who was working on transformers, then you can raise a big round before any kind of proof. But for mere mortals like ourselves, it's a bit harder to raise in the foundation model layer. However, if we go up in the stack, in the middleware section, that's where you have the tools. So if I'm BMW, how am I going to add AI? You could just call an API, but as people who work for SAP or any enterprise company, we know that, clean data is kind of like a fantasy, and workflows and processes that magically work and everything is streamlined, also a fantasy. So more likely you're going to use a tool to customize what these LLMs are providing to your own workflows, to your own business. And so in the middleware layer, there is opportunity. And Mark mentioned and Alvin mentioned Fixie. I'm an investor in Fixie, and they are in that category. They are helping you build agents. They are helping you get ChatGPT no longer be trapped in the box and actually come to your enterprise and be useful to you. Now, if we go one layer above that, at the top, we have the applications, the SaaS applications. And so why would there be opportunity? Because these large language models can kind of do anything, right? And the reality is they cannot do everything, because as they come out of the box, they actually are horizontal. They are not specialized for your vertical. If you're working in insurance or in oil and gas, you might have your own terminology. And so somebody has to take these models and fine-tune them and adapt them to your specific business knowledge and vocabulary and so on. And so at the application level, it's very interesting to see this last mile of AI on how it is adopted to the customer. I personally believe that the bottom layer will become more commodity over time, just like the cloud providers, and the value will be captured towards the customer, towards the last mile. And so far, we know that this is the right time. We have a framework on how are we going to validate or get some confidence in the idea. And we know that there is opportunity in AI. So we have to come to this point where we're just gonna open PowerPoint or Tome, this new AI PowerPoint automated generative AI building thing, and we have to put together a pitch. And this must be like terrifying for many founders, because you no longer can dream about many possible things. You have to commit to, here is the deck that I will use and I will try to raise funds with. And you become very aware that it might not work out, or you're going to get a bunch of no's. And so I'm going to break it for you here, like what are the main traps that founders fall into when they develop the deck, and what's an example of a structure. You can see the structure example on the slides. I'm not going to cover that. However, I'm going to talk about the main traps, and the main traps that have an impact towards, is there going to be a second meeting? Is there going to be a potential term sheet inside? So the first thing is, many founders get excited and they want to share as much information as possible. You know, the meeting starts and then they just spew all this information at you. And this would be great if we had all the time in the world, but as investors, we don't have all the time. And so it's important to remember that the first meeting, its only goal is to get the second meeting. And so you shouldn't have all the information in the first meeting. The first meeting is oh, this is interesting. Oh, this person is so amazing. I want to back them. And so you shouldn't overload the deck. You should keep it clean. You should front load the success. Maybe you have an open source product and you already have some sort of traction, or maybe you validated the product with some customers, with named customers, and that's the success you have so far. Well, that should be the first slide. And you might wonder why, or especially if you're an engineer like myself, you might feel like, okay, I don't want to market myself. That's like against my values. People should just magically know if we're good, right? Like dev tools. Nobody sells dev tools. Dev tools are chosen. But even in that case, there is marketing involved. But here for a deck, you should grab the attention of that VC. You should put yourselves in the shoes of the person you're pitching. Maybe she has had 7 other meetings that day, and at some point the brain tunes out. And in this way, if you front load the success, you are going to grab their attention. They are going to pay attention to you and be present in the moment and listen to why are you the best team to build this product, and follow with the rest of the structure of the deck. And the other thing that happens less in decks is, and in pitch meetings, and especially I would say for those of us who are a bit more technical, who like to look under the hood with, how does this work and how does this connect to this, is many people start the deck with, here, putting all the mess down on the table, like this part and this part, like, taking an engine and just shredding it into pieces and showing it to the investor. And that doesn't always resonate with everybody. If that investor has maybe tinkered with the technology as well, it might catch on, but it's not always the case. And so what you should do is trying to articulate a vision for the product and for the company. For example, for Google, it was very crisp. It was access the world's information in one click. What is that similar tagline for you? And best would be if that would be a tagline which is not we are Uber for this, or Uber for like pets ride sharing or whatever. Like, try to be original and focus on the customer and on the experience that a customer has. And being able to be a good communicator, it's something that a VC will pay attention, because it translates into a potential success for the company. Now, not everybody is a great communicator from the get-go, and some of us, like myself, English is my third language. And so it's not a deal breaker. It can be polished over time. But if you try to just front load the success, keep it to the essentials, the intriguing part, that such that at the end of the call, that VC will say, let's schedule another meeting, or when can we meet? Or they have to make plans with you. That's when you know they are interested. So if you do those things, you will maximize your chances to raise. And so you have a deck, and right now you have to get some meetings with VCs. And it's probably terrifying, unless maybe you're born in the Bay Area or live here and you have a bunch of friends who can make a bunch of intros for you. And then it's probably going to be a lot easier. But not everybody lives here, and there is amazing talent everywhere in the world. So here are some tips on how to make this process more efficient to get you to your goal, which is have a term sheet. And so the first thing you should do is know what you're looking for. There are many types of VCs out there, and founders, sometimes they just go without any knowledge and, in the cage of the lion. And it's a horrible experience. And I can empathize with them, because I've been a founder as well, and a failed one, an unsuccessful one. So I have even more respect for those who succeed against all odds. You have the much harder job, not a VC in front of you. You should also remember that. But basically, if I am to paint for you, the three big categories of VCs are, you have the ruthless VC, the all-in, and the grinder. The ruthless VC is a VC firm which is acting more like an index fund. They meet a promising founder, will write a check. The problem with that is, or it might not be a problem, it depends on what you want personally. But what happens is, with the ruthless VC, who's more like an index fund, they will invest in competitive companies as well. So they might give you money and preach help, because all the VCs are doing this. Although personally, I believe the customer service in VC is worse than in many other industries. I don't quite understand why that is the case, but the ruthless VC will give you money, and then will give money to maybe 3 other people who are building the same thing. And they see it as a bet, kind of survival of the fittest. If you don't, succeed, they will focus and with their time and resources and help on the other person. I don't really know how that works in practice, because if I was to start a company and I knew that this VC invested in my competition, I would be less likely to share information, be vulnerable, help out. However, there are many of these VCs in market. So one word of advice: do your references. Also, offline references that you found, also references that they've introduced you to. Usually VCs introduce you to the successful companies, which I think many times those companies didn't have a lot of help from that VC. They are successful because they are amazing, not because that VC necessarily helped them out. And so you have to find those companies where maybe things are not going so well. And it's not super hard. One trick is go on LinkedIn and check like the people progression hiring. If it's not, going like this and it's they're churning people, that's when you kind of know that if the company is not growing as fast, probably there are problems. And those are the people you want to talk with to figure out, were this VC there for me when I had to debug my company, when things looked really grim. And so that's the first category. The second category is the all-in VC. These are VCs which have to think really hard, because they have only one shot of investing in a market. So they have to market map, meet a bunch of companies. They have only one chance to succeed. And so they are the people who will be with you in the trenches after the investment as well. I believe my firm SignalFire is like that because we have a portfolio support team of top talent that goes in and helps the founders. And we also have as a firm goal founder NPS, something that we track regularly. And we've even built software that helps these founders to get talent or customers or expertise. And so that's another category of VC. And then the grinder is more of a risk adverse, in it for like a 3x type of return. There is no right or wrong. There are only options, and it's about what makes most sense for you and aligns with your philosophy and what kind of partner you want to have. But if it was for you to take something out of this, is it's possible to build a company and it's possible to fundraise. It's going to be a lot easier for you to do it if you know what you're looking for, if you know who is the deal partner that you want to partner with for 10 years or so, and what is that firm going to bring to you. Because let's not forget, maybe you could terminate any other type of relationship in your life, but as a board member and an investor, usually a lot harder, if not impossible. And so be wise, try to create opportunities for yourself and optionality, and do references to pick the best person for you to work with. And so how do you do that? Because many times when I tell founders you should do references, they say, I'm lucky even if I have one term sheet. What are you talking about? Like, I'm lucky if anyone gives me any kind of money. And the one way to go away from this position of vulnerability to a position of strength is you have to create a VC funnel. It's a bit like sales. You have to create a bunch of opportunities and you have to pre-qualify it. Because if you don't, it happens that either you get a low offer and then you cannot choose because you have only one offer, or you get a bunch of no's and you get demoralized when you shouldn't get demoralized, because maybe those VCs don't write the checks that you need, or maybe they don't believe in that market because they have no expertise in that market. And so you think that, oh, it must be something wrong with the idea, I'm never going to make it. But in reality, it was the wrong person. And there is one simple way you can find people who believe in what the category you're building in is Crunchbase. Go to Crunchbase and search companies in your segment and see who invested in them, or companies who exited in your segment. Those people will be the people who will get the market. They might have some scarring tissue about it if the company didn't exit well, but even so, you maybe can learn from their experience. In my experience so far of investing, it has been very rarely to see somebody write a term sheet when they didn't believe in a market and have one founder in 30 minutes convince them that, IoT is a great market, you should give me money right now. So I think it's going to make your life a lot easier if you pre-qualify this funnel. And you should also start them in batch, because you want these meetings to progress and get to a point where you have multiple term sheets at the same time and you can choose between them. And yes, it might be that you only have one, but guess what? You should enter this process of fundraising with the expectation that it's going to be an emotional roller coaster, and you only need one believer. You only need one person to give you a term sheet. That's all you need. And it's going to be, as I said, emotionally turbulent, but there is a simple tactic you can utilize here and go away from the typical trap of, VCs are not great to talk with, so I'm going to batch all the meetings in one day and be done with it and just forget about it. And I get it. Many VCs are not fun to talk with, even when you are a VC yourself. But you need to be able to extract learning and reflect about how that meeting went and the questions you got and how you answer them. So the easiest way to make it good for you and easier on you and your team is find a person you trust who believes in you. And at the end of each fundraising day, just have a call with them if they're not in person and talk out loud. How was it? What did you learn? And so on. For example, I do this for the companies I invest in when they go to raise the next round. We have at the end of each day, I know it's hard, and we get on the call and they can be vulnerable and say, this is what I got asked. Why do you think they asked me this question? Or what answer were they looking for? And I can ask them also to pause and reflect. Why do you think that you got that question or the reaction? Or why do you think you didn't get the second meeting? And is this the right person you would want to partner with? Because you might feel down as humans, rejection is an awful thing. And we might feel really upset that, hey, this person rejected me. But once you reflect around, did I even want to work with this person? Well, actually, they haven't asked such smart questions and they don't really get the technology. And why would I want to work with them? No. So you have to find somebody who believes in you and who can bring you perspective and extract those learnings for you. So that's a bit of the high level. So let's say you maybe raise the money, you're super excited, you get the possibility, you get the chance to live your dream and build this product. It's no longer just laying in bed at night and staring at the ceiling thinking, wow, wouldn't it be nice? Like now it's actually nice. You have money. So you have to assemble the right team now. One way to do that is to be able to reflect as a founder, what are your strengths and weaknesses? If you are able to be honest and admit to yourself what your gaps are and plan to hire for those gaps, that's a wonderful thing. There are many smart founders who sometimes might get a bit, the light of their ego, of their accomplishments might make them believe that they know better than everyone. And that's a flag. If you come like that in a pitch meeting and you are not able to articulate gaps and have a plan ready to share about, I'm going to hire this talent at this point in time, and this talent for this reason and for that reason, you're going to have a hard time raising. So yes, the best thing would be know what your gaps are, talk maybe with the people you go for advice to. VCs want to work with founders who are coachable. That doesn't mean, or I don't believe that as a VC, you should tell founders what to do, because how will you ever know better than them? You're not spending as much time as them, but you have seen many more games of chess being played. And so you can guide from the sidelines of, here's how I've seen this play out, or can I introduce you to this person who has done this move? But it's the founder who moves the chess pieces at the end of the day. So I would advise to be a bit reflective and introspective before you go out and fundraise. The other thing that you can do to assemble this team and maximize your chances of success is know your culture. And I don't mean the poster culture of, we say it like it is, and then in fact, we never do. And there's a lot of political backstabbing and things like that. So I don't mean the poster culture. And I know the culture is such an abstract, like, what do you mean? We're all collaborative. No, I mean, culture is just the behaviors that you reward in your company and the things that you tolerate less. And so even if it's just you with a term sheet and nothing else, that company is already a culture. It's all the baggage, if you think about your past job, who were the people you enjoyed working with and what was common to them? Well, turns out those things, you'll take them away with you also in your new company. And so that's important to realize, especially when maybe you have a co-founder and maybe you both come out of, I don't know, let's say IBM. You will subconsciously bring that culture with you, and maybe you'll hire more of those people with you. And so you will build like a mini IBM. And once you bring somebody from the outside, the mini IBM will reject that new organism. They won't be able to, even if they are amazing talent, they won't be able to adapt into the new role. So knowing your culture, why is that important? It's important for two big reasons. One, since we talked about fundraising, it's good to filter the VCs based on the culture fit. And why is that important? For example, for myself, if I am investing in companies where I share a similar culture with the founders, it's a lot easier for me to close candidates which are in high demand. Let's say machine learning founding engineer. They have 5 offers and I'm the last interview and I have to tell them why I invested in this company and what makes me excited. And if I don't share the same culture, it's going to be hard to even pre-qualify for that. It's going to be hard to be excited about the company genuinely. And it's going to be hard when I, for example, do go outside and try to source candidates myself in addition to the talent team, because sometimes we have to move fast and we don't have the time. So we need all hands on deck. And so I will reach out to people. How do I know if those people are right for the company, right? I usually tend to find people who are great on the technology side. I think most people are great on the skills, the hard skills. The tricky question is, do they share the culture of the company? And if you have that culture yourself, it's going to be a lot more easier and natural for you to filter out those candidates who don't match on the culture side. Because the early hires are key to the company, especially in AI when everything moves so fast. You have to be able to move fast, and you should not let anything else kind of like push you away from your goal. And so I believe that if more founders were to focus on filtering for culture first before they go to the technical interview, things will be a lot smoother and they would make less hiring mistakes. And that's why it's good to not only think like, wow, what's my culture? I guess I'm collaborative. Like, that's not enough. You have to write down all these past experiences and what the culture you think it is, and then work backwards from that and extract questions. And those questions, you will use them to vet candidates in the process. And it's going to be super useful because right now in this market, since there is so much talent out there, people put a job out and they get 400 people applying. It's insane. You don't have time to talk with all of them. You have to find a way to filter them out. And one of those filters, which is very important, is the culture. And the last point, which is very dear to my heart, yes, I have a partner title and our fund has over 1.8 billion assets under management, but I also live with purpose. And one of the things I care deeply about is the early team, those 10 employees. For example, if you want to have a diverse team and maybe you want to also hire some female engineers, it's going to be a lot harder if your first team is like 10 white guys. No offense to the white guys. Many of them are friends and mentors, and I'm very grateful for them in my life. However, I do believe that good people are very often diverse people. And so if you care about this, you should do it early on. There are studies out there showing that women will join if there are other women there. And if you can get women in leadership, it's going to be a lot easier for them to join. Because now they know that there's somebody who's similar to them, who's also going to be able to vote on their career progression and be their ally and support them, versus a monoculture And so I think that's a point that's good to remember and oftentimes neglected. Yeah, I think this is kind of the end. I have more a bit like what questions angel investors ask, since typically you go out to angels first, and then you go to VCs. But I think that I've already spoken a lot, so I would love to get some questions now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oana, for that really great talk. And we have now time for questions. And Mark, do you want to go ahead and start the questions?
Sure. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is from Jeff. How can we plan to avoid copyright infringement with content produced by AI, especially considering that AI can be inconsistent with outputs and is trained on existing copyrighted content and data?
That's a big problem right now, indeed. I think many smart people are working towards figuring out a solution. What I've seen is in the enterprise world, there is a lot of leadership angst right now, because you're thinking, wow, I'm going to try to use ChatGPT and then leak our IP to OpenAI or whatever. And so what I've seen people do is they don't rush towards the cloud AI. They are trying to get open source models, make them work on-prem, and set up some guardrails around them to make sure they are safe from a privacy and security point of view. But I think this is a topic up for debate. And as far as I know, many people are working on it, but there is no, silver bullet.
Our next question is from Yunpa, and she says, thank you on your impressive presentation. And she wants to know, is Kickstarter Indiegogo results a good way of market and use case validation?
That's an interesting question. I haven't used them personally. I would say that in reality, not everybody should raise venture capital money, because maybe you don't want to aim for like an IPO or like a big outcome. Or maybe you don't want to have that pressure of growing and the sales every quarter. And so you can get money from all kinds of platforms, maybe a grant, or you can bootstrap. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how you go about it. The validation comes from usually it's like, okay, I got the money, now I have to validate to get to product market fit. And it's usually you find 5 customers that buy the same, pay the same, and use the same. So it's the same user persona, they pay roughly the same amount, and they use the product in a similar way. And when a VC calls them and asks them, like, what do you get from this product? They are able to say what they get in a rather similar way. So any way you can get creative and talk with customers and try and get the validation from actually building a prototype, even if it's one that you're maybe embarrassed from early on, and that's okay. The best way, in my opinion, is, especially if you go for like a product-led motion or more of like a self-serve, is not to get into these design partners where you, spend 2 hours on a call with SAP to tell you about all their great things. It's you want to build a prototype, put it out there, and then create attention and divert traffic to it, and then see what sticks and experiment. You have to be very comfortable with the idea of failure. Failure means learning, and so you should do as much of it as you can early on to experiment with a product. And so I have much more experience with product-led motions versus top-down guy in a suit who sells you a product for $300,000. And for that, I find the build prototype, direct traffic towards it experiment to be a lot more efficient, then get on with some design partners.
Our next question is, if your new product or industry has defense security ramifications, how do you protect your intellectual property?
We're getting a lot of intellectual property questions. I'm not an expert in IP. However, what I've seen in terms of, I guess there are a few comments I have is, one, when you are going in diligence and pitching a VC, if you're asking for an NDA, that's usually a red flag. Companies don't die because somebody else steals their idea. And anyway, VCs shouldn't be doing that and would be in trouble. So I usually don't see people who are asking for an NDA to pitch. And they anyway don't get into such detail that we'll share all the nitty gritty. And so that's one way. For like the defense aspect, the only way I came into contact with it is companies trying to sell into government or regulated industries or the defense. And that's usually becomes a bit more particular about passing a lot more security tests. And also they take a deeper look at who are your investors. So if you want to raise maybe from China some money, it could be problematic when you want to sell to the government. But other than that, on the IP, I have not seen that come up as a big problem. Maybe that would be more in life sciences. I mostly invest in developer tools, AI, open source, more technical things, and not necessarily in the government or the life science area.
Looks like you have a customer. How can we contact you for potential follow-up discussions?
Oana at SignalFire.com.
Okay, that was easy. From Marvin, great presentation. Are there places you would suggest to try out AI startup ideas and or prototypes before starting actual development or looking for funding?
Places, you mean like an institution? So I guess since we cannot hear the person, you can just go on GitHub and just hack together something. A lot of these things are free or free. They have a free tier, freemium, and so you can just start playing with it already. If you want to have more of a hands-on approach, there are accelerators out there. Of course, everybody knows Y Combinator, and there are a few others. I would just caution people to really think about what do you get from those accelerators and what do you give. And what you give usually is 7% or more of your company. And if you feel comfortable with that, then you should do it. However, you should also realize that every funding round, when you add more money into the company, you will get diluted. And so you're giving a big chunk of your company early on. And so if you can do it without it, that would be great. If you want to just be part of a kind of a community, there are like Slack channels, Discords. I have one as well for founders where they're only founders and you can just go and ask questions. But I think just trying it out is the best thing you can do right now because there is a lot of information out there. I'm happy to share via Mark also some of the resources that are useful to me or some of the groups. For example, we have one for like ladies in machine learning, or there are different subgroups.
Here's a long question. I can repeat parts. In May of this year, PyTorch was refactored to web GPU, meaning we can now run neural networks in the browser at speeds comparable to NVIDIA CUDA. So the question is that foundational layer, given a 4 to 7 year look forward, practically accessible for specialized LLM, specialized to an industry or nice for an industry or for a pipeline company, or perhaps briefly producing use case specific LLMs for companies afraid to use the bigger names?
I'm not sure if I got it, but I'll try to answer. I think you mentioned that the ability to run it in the browser. So I do believe that the models right now are very expensive. If you talk with founders and you figure out how much they pay for compute per minute, it's not cheap. Even if you talk with people at, I don't know, Stability or like bigger companies, and they have all these ideas and they would like to experiment, but they have to go there to their boss and ask for compute. And so compute limitations are real. I do believe that these models are getting smaller and smaller and are going to, and I think there are some experiments already they are working right now that they can just run on your normal laptop. And that's exciting. I think there was also a nuance about, is that a foundation model? The distinction here is if you fine tune it or prompt engineering it or adapt it somehow to your own data, then it's your own version of it. And so I am excited about large language models becoming a lot more useful than what is believed to be right now. I think there is a lot more hype. They are indeed very useful, but I don't think they are so useful as the hype claims to be, because they are limited by the compute factor and the size. I think that's going to be compressed over time. So I'm excited about the potential of them to just impacting our daily lives. And if that was not the right question, because it was a bit hard to get it, please contact me, either email, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever, and just like ask me. I'm happy to jump on a call and answer it.
Great. Greg, our treasurer, has just mentioned that about cost that Palo Alto told us recently they spent $1 billion on Google Compute to use AI against their data set for finding security incidents in all of their collected data. Repeating, 1 billion in a year.
Yeah, the numbers are huge. That's why people are like, yeah, let me open source my model. I'll give you all my secret sauce. Unfortunately, they are not, because that's in the compute and the data. And that's why they need to raise all this money.
Okay, great. Well, I think we'll probably wrap things up here, but I'll ask one final question. Is the process of a company, is it still kind of like the toy business? Meaning it's you have an idea, you try to keep it secret to the point where you then need support to make this real.
I don't believe companies die or they don't happen because somebody else steals the idea. The reason for that is you've seen even in this presentation how many things a founder should do. It's actual work. And so not everybody wants to do the work. And the saddest thing is to be one of those people who sees something really cool and says, oh, I could have done this. I've thought about it. But you've done nothing about it. And so you're just one of the people who like remains with the regret of a lost possibility versus somebody who creates it. I don't think the companies die because somebody steals the idea, because you can have an idea, but if you're not able to recruit people, to fundraise, to execute, to scale as you need in the parts of the company, as you go from 0 to 1, then to 15 million, then to 50, and so on, each of those stages requires a different skill set. So even you as a founder might be the same founder. The skills you need to get to 1 million are very different than the skills that you need to get to 10 to 15 or like 50 or more. And so I don't believe that discussing about your idea is something that's going to kill you. What's going to kill you is not having a bias for action. What's going to kill you is worrying about the competition too much. Guess what? The competition cannot write you checks. Only your customers can write you checks. And so I don't believe that the keeping your idea just hidden away is going to help you succeed. Executing and making customers happy and monetizing, that's going to help you succeed.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Oana, for that, answering the questions. So I've launched the poll here. So there's 5 questions. We'd like to get your feedback on our webinar. So you can please enter those questions. And for our closing, as Mark mentioned about, we will have a in-person ACM Chicago event on September the 13th. So you can put that on your calendar. We will let you know more when we have more details on that in our meetup event site. So as Mark mentioned, it's Bill Gushwan from Columbia College. He's going to be talking about Incubator, Techstars, iCorps, and Amazon. And of course, we are also looking for other speakers to speak to our group. So if you have something interesting that you want to share, then please reach out to either Mark or myself. So you see the contact information there, vice chair at Chicago ACM.org and chair at Chicago ACM.org. And if you want to see our previous recordings of our webinars, we have very many good speakers and talks. So you could go to our YouTube channel. It is at bit.ly/ACMCHI video. And you can see some of the ones that we've done in the past. And also as well, we're always, our organization, is the way we are, because we have, passionate volunteers that volunteer their time to host and to help out with the meetup. So if you are interested, if you have any talent or you want to, bring something back to the community, this is a great way of doing it. So we have opportunities for writing, for planning. If you want to use your skills for editing, videography, what we usually do is that, after we finish this recording on Zoom, we will go ahead and edit it to make it more kind of a professional quality, before we post it onto our YouTube channel. So if you have any skills on that, we would be very happy to have you to help us with that. Also as well for networking with future speakers. So, we're always looking out for more speakers for the different events and different months that we have throughout the year. So if you are interested in that, again, please also contact, vice chair at chicagoacm.org or chair at chicagoacm.org. And one more final thing is that for those people here, if you are going for your professional engineering and you want a professional development hour, this particular webinar was for 1 hour. This counts for it. You will get a link to the PowerPoint where you can go ahead and put your name there, and you can get that as a credit for your PDH. So please wait for an email from us to the link to that, and then we will also be sharing also the video recording and as well as the slides here and also the slides that Oana presented this evening.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak with the group. Okay,
great. So this pretty much ends our webinar for this evening. And pretty much for the summer, we may probably also have some stuff, during July or August, but usually, a lot of people are on, summer holidays. So, if you're on summer holidays, have a safe trip wherever you're going. And we may have other ones, so just stay tuned to our ACM Chicago meetup group. Again, thank you very much to all the panelists here this evening. Thank you to all the ACM Chicago officers. Thank you to ACM New York, Hari, And also thank you, obviously, to our speaker, Oana. And thank you for all of you, right, for coming. You're the ones that make, our meetup, a success. You're the ones that come in and give us, great feedback and great questions. So we really, really appreciate, all that you come to participate this evening. All right, so I think we're pretty much done, and everyone have a very good evening and good rest of the week, and enjoy the wonderful rest of the summer.